Hi, welcome to my latest pastel video. This time we're doing a red-eyed frog, so lots of vibrant colours. And what you can see on screen at the moment, that's my grey pastel matte paper, and I've transferred the image onto that then with just white transfer paper. Now, lots of you are probably familiar with the graphite or carbon transfer paper, which gives you that black mark on your paper. Well, you can also get it in white. So it's just called white transfer paper. I usually use something cheap like Royal Langnickel. Anything will do, just to get that image down on there. Now I'm using Rembrandt pastels rather than my standard pastel or pan pastels that you've seen me do on most beginning parts of videos where I do the blocking in. And the reason for that is I couldn't quite get this colour, this quite dark rich green colour in my pan pastels. And that's really, can happen quite often where you gotta look through the set that you've got then of your pastels to try and get, a close colour. You're almost never going to get a perfect colour, but it's going to be close enough. And also these Rembrandt pastels or pastel sticks, they're really very, very opaque as well. So that's another advantage I've got with it in this drawing. And you can see I'm just fairly firmly blocking it in. This background is going to be quite subdued, quite blurry as well, but I need to build up the layers. So I'm just going to carry on blocking it in with these Rembrandt pastels. And if ever you see me holding these roundy, large kind of pastels, they are the Rembrandts. When you see me with the small sticks later on, they are Conti sticks, just for you to know the difference. So switching over to the browns, it's more of a rich dark brown at the top, almost black. So there I'm putting the black in because what you find with pastels, you don't get many really dark browns either in the pencils or in these soft pastels. They seem to be few and far between. You'd think that actually a very dark brown, almost black, would be easy to find, but it's not. Just trying out one of these finger covers that you can use for your pastels, supposed to protect your finger. And I thought I'd try that out. Keeps your fingers clean as well, but I find with pastel that's not a problem. It washes off very easily. But I was interested in trying them out because you'll find that pastel matte paper and the other sanded papers can actually make the tips of your fingers a little bit sore if you're doing a lot of blending and pushing quite hard. So these finger covers do actually work, but I find they don't push in quite as well as just normal fingers. So I don't know if I'll be using them very often. They're okay if you've got a sore finger. Like I say, it does protect it. It does seem to feel a bit more natural and actually pushes into the tooth of the paper better without them. So now I got that really dark layer down. That's where I'm adding those browns and greens back on top, which is just tinting that colour because I don't want it to be really flat and dead black looking. Always like to add and introduce as many colours as I possibly can, especially with pastels. Pastels seem to be a medium where colours are really important. You've got a lot of choice, and it seems a shame to waste it. So I'm putting some black now over the green because once again I haven't got a very dark green. They're difficult to find as well. So sometimes you've got to combine a green with a black to get it dark enough because I want this background to recede in the drawing. So that's all quite nicely blended. It takes a few layers. Don't expect to get a real opaque layer on the first layer. If you do, you're probably putting so much pastel down that you fill in all the tooth of the paper up anyway, and you'll find adding subsequent layers very difficult. So I like to build it up a little bit at a time. Okay, so there's nothing complicated about doing that background. Now you see I'm just putting in some of the very brightest highlights on the frog, and the reason I'm doing that, I've got a nice dark in for the background area, so a real dark, almost a black, and by putting in the highlights it allows me now to judge the full range of tonal values. Now I've never done a frog or anything this vibrant in pastels before, and it's only so bright you can go with pastel sticks or pencils, so you've got a range. Now that range may not be great enough to actually get the brightest yellowy greens on the frog that I'm seeing on my reference screen. So by putting in those real vibrant brights, now that's the brightest ones I've got in my set, I know what my level is. So if I haven't got something that bright, I can always darken the background a bit more, and that will give me the illusion of the frog being more vibrant and lighter in colour as well. So that's why generally when I'm doing pastels or even oil paint, I'll do something similar, and fairly early on I'll get those real vibrant brights actually in place, even if it's just a dot. And you can see on screen now that I've got my pan pastels. That's the thing in my left hand. If you're not familiar with them, they're a compressed, real vibrant, very colour compacted pastel in a pan, and you use small tools then to put them on. And they're really good for doing things like undertones and underpaintings, where you can do, you know, the whole painting with them if you want, and they come in a large array of colours. And there's some nice greens in there as well, and nice vibrant yellows. So I'm going to block the frog in using these small applicators, and that's really going to speed things up. And then I can come back in with my pastel sticks, my small Conti sticks, which I'll sharpen, and also my pencils for the final details. But the pan pastels are really great at getting in these underlayers first, and in a quick fashion too. Okay, so I've zoomed right in so you've got a better view, and you can see how I actually angle and change the angle of the applicator as well, so that I can get, you know, quite good accuracy with it. I'm not worried if everything's a little bit blurry at the moment. That's what I'm going for. I'm just going for that general colour. General colour, not too light yet, not too dark, so something in the middle. Then I'll come in with, you know, pencils as well to create more of those darks. The pencils will give me much more control again over the application, and I'll come in with the lights as well on top. So you can see you can go, you know, up and down to the sides. Pretend that you're kind of creating the shape out of clay. That's what I like to do when I'm using tools or brushes. I like to go with the actual shape and form of the object. So I'm not worried at all about getting an exact colour match. This is, you know, my map as I call it. This is showing me where the green parts are and where the blue parts are, where it should be slightly lighter, where it should be slightly darker. And that's going to make it all that much more easy to detail in the next few stages. Just going to start now to do a bit more on the leaf, because as I begin to work more on the frog, I want to develop this drawing from the top down. And lots of the frog, obviously the hands at the front, they're going to be actually on the leaf. So I want to get the leaf underneath it a little bit, so that I'm not going up too much to the edge. I don't want to be dirty in the bright orange colours that's going to go on the fingers. So I'm just going to carry on working down the actual surface of the drawing. So add in some more of that green. because we've got quite a light layer of the leaf and a couple of darker areas there as well where it's in shadow. So they're quite important to get in. They're very similar colours to the frog. And I want the top edge of that stem part of the leaf, or the large part going up the centre of the leaf, to be quite soft, quite blended. So I want most of the sharp edges to be on the frog itself, just to make it really stand out as a centre of interest. So time to make a start on one of the most vibrant parts of the drawing, so that's the fingers. And I didn't have a really vibrant orange in my pencils that came up quite as vibrant as these Conti sticks. So what I do sometimes I use them just as they are. So I've got, you know, the actual 4 sharp edges on there, just so it comes out of the box if they're quite new. And if not, if I've used them a few times, I may actually sharpen them just on a little bit of sandpaper just to create a chiseled edge. It gives me a lot more control, and I'm using them then very much as a pencil. Now you don't want to go putting too much pastel down, because if you put too much down, you're going to fill the tooth of the paper up and you're not going to be able to get your highlights and things on top at the later stage. So I'm just, you know, kind of mapping in the positions and where they're going to go. And also sometimes I get a little bit bored if I'm just doing greens and just doing the leaf, and I may want to, you know, spice things up for myself and actually get on and do something a little bit more detailed, perhaps the eye, perhaps the feet, and then come back to the larger parts. So although really you want to get in, you know, the from top to bottom, that especially if you're working upright. I'm working flat on this just so you can see it more easily on the video, but if you're working upright, probably want to go mostly from top to bottom, so any pastel dust just drops down on the paper that you haven't actually drawn on yet, so you're not contaminating as much that way. So you can see now where those Conti sticks, those real vibrant sticks, are coming into their own, because I can get that sharp edge. You know, they're quite firm but very, very vibrant, and that's ideal for the real light areas and also for these fingers and toes. So just blocking in the basic shape for now. Then I can come back and add the details on top. And I know some of the areas need to be darkened because they're in shadow, but for now I'm happy just to get that basic shape in and the position in, just to show myself where it all goes. So selected my brightest yellow, because that goes along the side of the frog. Then I've got a slightly darker, more subdued Conti stick, just putting in those shadow areas. So I've slowed it right back down again, and I'm just going to put a darker area under the chin. You can see how I'm really mixing and matching with my pastels. Sometimes I'm picking up the sticks, sometimes I'm picking up these larger Rembrandt sticks. So, you know, you can use whatever's fit for the purpose at the time. You could do the old drawing in pencils if you want, but I find, you know, if you're doing large areas, say perhaps a dark green in pencil, your pencils are not going to last long, because when you think of the actual amount of pastel in a pencil, It's very minimal compared to, say, the size of the stick I'm using now, and the stick would cost possibly half to the same price as a pencil, so you're getting probably 3 or 4 times as much pastel out of it. So it makes sense, if you can and you're doing large areas, to actually use the larger sticks. I'm just using this colour because I didn't really, once again, I didn't have something exactly what I wanted in my pencils, I found. And when you're blocking in, you're doing it, you know, much more loosely at the beginning. Don't need all the details straight off. Save the details, because otherwise you're only going to start contaminating it by resting on it and doing all those type of things, and you've got to have a good underlayering first anyway. So I'm just going to continue now, blocking it all in. One of the things that attracted me to this drawing was this real vibrant side to the frogs. It's got some real dark punchy blacks in there, and this real iridescent blue that I'll be putting on the side in a moment. And it really contrasts well with the yellows and the greens. So you see, I've gone to the stick again because I want that vibrant colour. I had a similar colour in pencil, but it wasn't quite as vivid a blue, and I really wanted it to stand out. And that's why as well I didn't put the green under this area when I was doing the pan pastels. I wanted to keep it quite pure so I could put a pure colour on there and it would look really vibrant as well. I wanted it to be as vibrant as I could possibly make it, and it'll look even better when I start to put the dark blacks that's edging them. So a little darker under the belly. It's kind of a greeny brown under there. And then it goes a bit more white coloured around the edge of those blues. Just softening it slightly. And then I'm just checking my colour against the screen there. And then nice and dark underneath as I begin the shadow area. Now I'm beginning to put in the shadow underneath the frog. Now that's going to give the appearance of the frog actually lifting up from the paper surface. It's going to give it that three-dimensional look. And the darker the shadow is underneath, the more it's going to make that give the impression of a very bright light above. So if I only had a very subtle shadow, you'd know instinctively that it was going to be perhaps a cloudy sky above. But when you've got a real sharp edge like this and it's dark, you know it's going to be really vibrant, bright sun above it. So I'm being quite careful where I'm going, pushing fairly firm as well. So as I said, this has got to be dark, and then I can start to work on the real large part of the leaf as well then. So that I'm covering most of the actual paper surface with pastel, and then I can come back in and refine it. You know, lots of artists actually like to start top left hand corner and completely finish each area as they come down, but you know, with 20 years worth of oil painting and experience with that, I've, you know, always done this blocking in method, so it's quite natural for me to do that as well with pastels. So you can see I'm using that paper stump just to push the pastel into the paper. It's smoothing it in and it's forcing it in more than I would do if I was using my finger. And if you use circular motions, you get a smoother effect to it again. And then I go on top sometimes with my fingers just to smooth it out and push it all the way in. Now that's going to push it into the tooth of the paper, which means I'm still going to have some of that tooth left if I want to come back in and adjust these colours a bit. See, I've just put a bit of blue in it, so you can layer colour on top of colour and it'll all give different effects as well. So it's quite a light blue on the legs, on the arm, just blending it in again, forcing it into the tooth of the paper, and then I'm just starting the shadow areas around the back end. I'll add some colours into these later on, but I just wanted to get the actual positioning in the right place. It's all going to look a bit strange until I get the green of the leaf that the frog is standing on in as well, but I know it's right. I'm looking at the reference, it looks right on the reference, so if I just follow that for now, I know I'm going to be doing okay. Using that blender again just to smooth everything out. Then coming in with the green for the leaf, that's the darker areas. Then a few more adjustments with these pan pastels before I start to, really work on the frog. So I want to get the underpainting done with the pans. Okay, now it's time to start tackling the major part of the leaf. And what I've decided to do is to use a Conti stick so that I've got plenty of control, and I'm going to put in the white marks of the leaf. Now if you look at the reference photo, you'll see that the veins of the leaf are quite pronounced in areas. Now I know I need to get a lot of the green on there. Now if I just cover everything in green, then I'm going to lose the positioning of my veins, which may not be so much of a problem. I could probably do it by line of eye, freehand, but I think if I put these in now, I'm not going to lose them when I'm blocking in the major parts of the green, and it'll be easier, I think, at this stage to re-establish them then. So, things like drawings like this, it's all about thinking how you're going to accomplish things. I've never done one like this. Everything I do is something new. It's a new challenge, which is good, which is exciting. So, you've got to try and plan forward, think things out, and if you're really, really unsure of something that it's going to work, try it on a bit of scrap paper. Now, the worst that would happen here is that when I start putting the greens on and blending, I'm going to lose these lines, so it's not the end of the world. So I'm not going to bother trying it out on a bit of scrap paper for this. But if it was something major that could ruin it, then I most certainly would. So what I'm going to do is get these veins in, and then I'm going to switch over to the probably the Rembrandt pastels and start blocking in the dark greens and the mid and lighter greens as well. So darks in first, fairly firm. I'm going to have to do a couple of layers to cover this. I'm going out fairly wide as well, not sticking to little strips like you can see on the reference. And mid-tones, because I know I'm going to blend all of this together, so I'm not worried about it looking like stripes at the moment. It's a good thing with pastels, you can really blend them almost to nothing, especially when you use a paper stump like I'm using now. So I'm using it on the side, so I've got a larger area to actually blend with. So just pushing it up and down, side to side, little circles with it as well. And you can see now how those white marks, the small veins are staying there, they're not disappearing completely. So I still see the actual positioning of those. Okay, so I think the leaf has turned out pretty good so far. I'm going to come back into it, refine it, but the major part is there. So I can't wait any longer. I'm going to get on with the eye of the frog, which is something I've been looking forward to doing because it's not that often you get to have a go with something that's this vibrant and using such lush colours as well. It's the reddest pencil I've got in my Carbofello set. So I'm going to block that in, then I'm going to need to create shape and form, I'm going to need to actually have it darker then at the bottom. Now obviously with a frog there's a black slit right up the centre of the eye, and I'm going to leave that undrawn on, so you can see I've left a little area there to put the black ink, so I want it to be really dark black. And there's also going to be a small pure white highlight there as well. Now, you know, with pastels we can layer on top a layer quite easily, but sometimes you want the colour to be pure, and if you want it really pure, that's when you leave the area there if you possibly can, and then you know that perhaps your darkest dark, your black is going to be really black, and your white is going to be that much whiter and brighter as well. So very light touch at the bottom, so I want to darken that red. Haven't got the exact colour that I can see on the reference, but by, you know, laying a colour over a colour, I can adjust the red, make it look darker and get it close enough. So you don't always have to own every single colour in your set, because that's never going to happen. You're never going to get every exact colour, or you will have a room full of colours and you have thousands of pounds worth, and you know there'll always be something that you haven't got. So learn how to do this layering technique. So coming in with the black, and you can see how that really makes the eye area pop, so to speak. It really makes it much more three-dimensional looking. And now when I put the dark in with a nicely sharpened pencil, you see how the frogs start to come alive with his eye. You can see that dark then is really a nice rich black. And of course, only when I put the highlight in does it really give it that zing and really make it look realistic instantly. So that's the basics of the eye done. Now if you're struggling to do eyes, I've got a masterclass video. It's in oils and it's hours long, and I cover lots of different eyes. But the principles and the techniques are exactly the same in oils as pastels. We layer pretty much light over dark, which is the opposite to a coloured pencil. So it's much easier for us pastel and oil artists to layer that light over a dark. So if you're struggling with eyes, and they really are quite easy to do when you know the basic principles, as I said, I got that video over on my website. So now I'm just going to start going over things now and start to refine as I start to do a second and a third layer. And now you see it, I'll use much more pastel pencils and actual Conti sticks that have been sharpened, and they're the tools for details because you can get those real sharp edges. and those sticks are nice and vibrant too. So with those, you've got, you know, they're the best of both worlds really. Got the sharpness of a pencil, but also that increased vibrancy as well. So I can't hold off any more now. I really want to start detailing at least some areas on the frog. I probably should be doing the leaf instead and completing that and then doing the frog, but I get a little bit eager to get on with some areas, especially eyes. And with oil painting, because there's no chance when it's dry of smudging an area, I usually get on with the eyes actually and detail those quite early on in a painting. With pastels, I usually wait a little bit longer because I don't want to particularly be resting on the surface with paper once I've got the fine details in, because even though pastel matte will hold lots of layers and they hold it much better than virtually any other paper, obviously pastel's still got that tendency to blend and to smudge. Now I know there's lots and lots of pastel spray fixatives out there, and I've tried lots and lots of pastel spray fixatives and I've yet to find a good one. I've used the top makes, I've used cheaper ones, and they all drastically alter, in my opinion, the colours and the tones to the point of ruining a piece. So that's why I don't use those. It's a shame. If they could actually do one that would seal it properly, because I found that even if you spray quite a lot of these pastel fixatives, they still don't actually fix it. You can still put your finger over the top and rub pastel straight off. So it's not as if they're actually really fixing it anyway, but hopefully one day in the future they'll actually be able to invent one, and that'll save a lot of hassle then, especially with storing pastels as well. So for the time being, I don't use any sprays, and I just try not to be, in the last few layers, I try not to be leaning too much on the most detailed areas. So you can see I'm just doing a few marks, putting in the shadow area of the mouth, highlighting around the lips. Makes a big difference. You can see now how just by putting in a few, you know, more detailed marks, such as these little light reflections, it really adds to the drawing and really starts to make the realism come to the fore in it as well. And this stage is, you know, is fairly quick to do it because we've got that underlayer down. We've done all of the real hard work, in my opinion, by getting the actual mid-tone colours in, the lightness and the darkness pretty good as well. And this is the refinement stage. The last half of the drawing is refinement, but it's what really separates, you know, a real brilliant drawing or painting from something that can be a bit mediocre. So it's now you need to, you know, really start to concentrate on the reference and look and say to yourself, what's different? Do I need to go lighter, darker? How do I create these textures? Do I need a stabbing motion with a pencil to create little dots? Do I need to stroke it to create longer lines? Push hard to create more of a distinctive mark, or just use a light touch to have a, you know, very subdued mark? These are the things you need to ask yourself. You can watch all my drawings as much as you want, but you've got to get in a mindset to ask yourself all these questions and see the differences between the reference and your drawing, especially if you're doing, you know, lots of realism, which is, you know, pretty much what people want with wildlife art. So I'm just going to carry on with the refinement, making a better selection of pencils, trying to get more accurate colours, more accurate tones. So the head looking much more three-dimensional now. I've started to get those darker greens in and the blacks. Nice sharp pencil. I sharpen my pencil with the swordfish sharpener most of the time. I've got reviews on YouTube showing myself using sharpeners, the ones I recommend for pastels as well. And I've done quite a few pastels and I'm still using the same sharpener. Lots of people say they go blunt. I put a graphite pencil, a woodless graphite pencil usually. I do a few turns with that in there just to keep the blade sharp after I've sharpened say 4 or 5 pastel pencils, and that seems to be working because I'm on my same fairly cheap swordfish sharpener, and I find it much easier. I really can't get on with the time it takes to use a blade to sharpen the pastels. Okay, so let's detail the feet a little bit. So I've got a dark, I'm bringing out some Derwent pencils now. It's a set I've got, and they've got, the thing with the Derwents, they've got lots of lovely oranges and pinks in there, which you don't find in that many sets. Quite a different range of colours to the Carbothellos. Carbothello's got some brilliant browns and greys. So put in the darker area. Then just put in the bit of green on the top. So a little bit of green on that finger. And then when I go in with a dark brown, which will make this finger and the hand actually stand proud of the leaf, and it makes it look really quite three-dimensional, especially when I get the lighter tones on. See, just a little bit of work there really makes it look much more 3D. So I'm going to start working more on the leaf, because what I want to do now is bring certain areas like this background leaf up to pretty much completion, so I haven't got to keep resting my hand on the drawing and going over the top. I want to actually complete areas, or 99% complete them. I'm just putting a bit of dark black lightly over the green because I haven't got a green dark enough. So I'm going to have to use the black and the green in combination to give me that dark green. And as I said, I'm going to try and, complete things as I come down the drawing surface now from top to bottom. So I want to get this background leaf completed, almost finished. Then I can start to possibly think about completing the large green section of leaf. And then last of all, I want to get onto the frog and work on that, because that's the part I don't want to smudge too much. That's the part, the frog itself, that's going to have most of those really sharp details on them. So you can see now I'm getting that final layer on there. It's all starting to look a lot more solid. It's nicely blurred. It's not going to distract from the frog at all. And it's nice to have that top leaf quite dark behind the oval part of the green eye. It's really a nice play of light against dark there. So I'm just adding some of the browns back in. Get the pastel in first before I start blending it. So you're just blending with my finger, softening it all off. No sharp edges in this area. And then just, a bit of refinement. And this leaf needs to go a little bit brighter. It's catching the light, the same as the frog. So I put the pastel down, then I'll come in, blend it away. And I can afford for there to be a bit more detail on that particular part. Because it's that bit closer, don't forget. So I don't want a sudden drop off into a real blur. So back to work now on the major part of the leaf, because I need to get down quite a bit of pastel in here really. I'm putting in the darker sections, and then I'll put in the mid-tones and lights because I want a nice smooth blend. At the moment it's really, I find on the reference photo that it really stands out, each individual vein and undulation in the leaf, and I don't want it distracting too much from the frog. So I'm going to make mine a little bit more subdued. So I'm getting plenty of pastel down, and then what I'm going to do is actually blend it out quite a bit, and then I can also always come back in with the sticks and the pencils then to give it the level of refinement I want without it distracting too much. So with the next layer on, once again this area now is starting to look much more opaque. Getting those darks in just before I start to really blend this area. So I'm going to come back and detail the leaf later on. Right at the end of this video now, I'm just going to blend it out with my fingers again, but you can still see where the lighter strokes need to go when I come back with the pencils. It's done what I thought and what I'd hoped. It's not obliterated those lines completely. So that's going to make it much easier when I start to really detail them.